Good morning. It's about 6 o'clock in the morning. The sun is coming up over there. You can't really see it. It's coming up behind me. I got up at probably around 5:15, meditated, have my coffee now, out with the dogs. I was just thinking, because I've been kind of flat for the last, not really flat, just kind of inside of myself, just kind of in the moment. Yesterday, I had a really good focus day. I sat all day long and just worked on. I got back from my morning walk. See, I'm tired of this thing not having money. I'm tired of it. I know how to make money. I've done it in the past. I've run businesses. I've managed shops. I've always been very, very independent. I know how to do these things. And in the last, I think 10 years since, well, no, I wouldn't say 10 years, but it has been kind of like a different phase in my life in the last 10 years since my husband and we have 4 children. So I have a 26-year-old son, and he has his own business, and he's very successful in it. He does like on the web when you it's not advertising, it's shivuk. Anyway, he does something on the internet, like with advertising, and for clients, like he'll take a product or a service or something and run campaigns for it and do like internet networking for it. I'm forgetting the word, and it's like such an obvious word. And then my daughter, she's 25. So here, I'll do the list. I have a 26-year-old son, a 25-year-old daughter. I have a 16-year-old son, and he is and a 14-year-old son. He's going to be 14 next month. So so it's 14, 16, 25, 26. And so my daughter, she opened it's like a pension for dogs, but it's not really a pension. It's more like when people go on vacation. It's like a vacation place for dogs up in the Golan Heights. Oh, look, the sun's just coming up over there. You can just see it. Beautiful. Beautiful. And so she has a pension for dogs, and her boyfriend just opened up a pub. And it's one of the only pubs up there. I think she said it's the only pub up there in that area. So as soon as they opened, it started going right away. So she's super busy. And then my 16-year-old and my 14-year-old, they're in between my place and my husband's place. So about 10 years ago, it was 10 years ago in August, we moved back to Israel from the States. We had been in the States for some years, and we had opened a business in the Chicago area. We had a moving company. It was called Done Right Moving, and we were pretty successful. We were, I mean, for what we did, because when we moved to the States, was it 2006, I think, before the summer of 2006, and we moved with nothing. I think we had it was $1,200, and that was after we had opened up all of our savings and all of the costs of moving and everything, and that's what we ended up with. And my then husband moved over there a couple of months before. He had a job offer driving a truck, moving, and so he moved over there before and took a job. And then I came over with 2 kids with nothing, with $1,000. I mean, I look back at it now, and I was 20, what was I, 29 maybe? 28, 29, I think it was 29. We moved over there with 2 kids. My ex-husband, he didn't know even English. He didn't know English. And so we moved over there with nothing, with very little means. And somehow everything just seems to work out. And that's something that you can always trust. Like when you decide to do something, you're going to do it. I wasn't even looking at the money. I was just looking at, we're going to do this. I wanted, my kids were born over here. And because I moved over here when I was 12, so you have to live a certain amount of years. I didn't have, I didn't marry an American citizen, then I wasn't able to transfer my American citizenship onto my children without them coming over there, but I could bring them over there to live with me. And as soon as we landed there, they like got their inheritance of the American citizenship. And so we lived over there for quite a few years, and it was a real experience. But when I was over there, even before then, I had learned graphic design and website building. So I had my own business over here that I was building websites and doing graphic design even before then. So I've always been independent and doing my own thing. And I think in the marriage, see, I'm not blaming. I've gone through so much to be able to realize my part in everything and take responsibility for everything that is my responsibility. Nobody can do to you what you don't allow them to do. I mean, in the big picture, I think that you understand. I'm not talking about things that are out of, not, I know that there are things that are out of your control, but I'm saying in your control. Nobody can do to you what you don't allow them to do. And I think that it took me so many years to leave, so many years, because I didn't believe in myself. I didn't think that I could do it on my own. I was raised and conditioned in a family that you don't get divorced. You work on it. You stay. Divorce wasn't. My parents are still together. Most of my extended family in the States, divorce is not in my family. So me and my two older brothers have all gotten divorced. But I have two younger. I have a younger sister. She's married. And I have a younger brother who hasn't gotten married yet. He's 33. Very handsome. If you're on my Facebook page, you can see we just did a video together on Friday. It was funny. So I know how to do this. But something in the last few years after the divorce, I went through this major depression breakdown, and I couldn't do anything, and I could get up in the morning and just run away. I got to where I felt like an empty shell. I talked a little bit about it. I don't think I've done a video completely about the depression yet, but I don't even know if there's anyway, it doesn't matter. But during that time, I couldn't do anything. I just realized I can't bring myself to sit and do anything. And I couldn't work. And it had been like months and months and months that I couldn't work. And I was barely managing to keep up the little bit of business that I did. And I wasn't really even keeping it up. I was just keeping it alive somehow. And I was diagnosed with post-trauma. And when I was diagnosed with post-trauma, I actually went in to get the diagnostic because I was looking at all the traits of post-trauma, what it is. I was like, oh wow, I have all of this. And it didn't occur to me that I really had post-trauma. I just thought, oh cool. Why? Because I wanted to go and get a prescription for weed. And I thought, okay, this is a way to go get a prescription. So I went into a psychiatrist. And she had looked at all of my history, because when I came back from the States, I was drinking alcohol heavily. I was twice the weight that I am now. a lot because of the alcohol, a lot because of just the way that I was living. It's comfort eating. I was in a marriage that wasn't good for me for years and years and years. It was a really bad cycle. We were beating each other up. I mean, like, emotionally. It was a really, when I got a divorce, I was blaming. It was his fault. He always treated me like crap. But then when I really got to the nitty gritty of it and I was looking at it, yeah, okay, so yeah, I do agree with that. He was treating me like crap, but I wasn't sitting there taking it. I was shooting crap balls back. I mean, there was crap flying in all directions. So. And I'm good at it. I'm like super smart, so I could get right in there, really into like the little, with him. I think I was a little more sophisticated at shooting crap balls because I really knew where to shoot them. Like if he just called me names, like he would call me stupid on a daily basis, and I used to think, that I'm above it because I know I'm not stupid. But when you live for years and years and years and years, you don't realize how those things come in under the surface. They come in, they seep in, and they become part of you, and you become insecure in those ways. And then I started eating. So then I started gaining weight. And, I've done so much psychological work. I went to just straight up therapy with therapists, like just straight up conventional. I did Theta healing. I did alternative. I've done, like sound healing, touch healing. I've went through my sexuality because I know that there's a lot of healing in sexuality. So I've experimented and experienced my sexuality because I got married really young. I was 20 when I got married. 20. I was 20. I think I was a week before I was 20, and by the time I was 22, I had 2 kids. And there were a lot of things. I grew up really early because we moved around a lot. So I matured quickly, and I think just I matured quickly anyway because it seems like I was always outside on a different plane than most. We also moved a lot. So I kind of came from a different world than all the people around me everywhere that I went because it felt like that. Um, be here now. Be present. It's so pretty. It's so pretty. So that's where I'm sitting. Beautiful. And so, where was I going with this story? Oh, okay. So when I got the diagnosis of the post trauma, I was like, oh, cool, I can get out the license to. They didn't give it to me because I'm an alcoholic. Because I already have in my history that I'm an alcoholic. So it's something that is like addictive. So they didn't give me the prescription, which is just simply ridiculous because I know that there is, I know that there's also abuse in marijuana, but I know that there's medicine in marijuana. And I know that a lot of, when I quit drinking, I went into a rehab. I went into a rehab for 2 weeks. I came out and that was it. I mean, not that that was it with having to deal with it, because once you come home after rehab, that's where the real, I didn't realize that, because when you're off at rehab, it's really easy not to drink. You come back into the environment that you were used to drinking at, that causes you that has all of your like things that instigates you and makes you want to drink. You come back into all of the things that triggered your drinking, and you're standing in a new place. And what really, really held me there is that when I got home from after 2 weeks of being away, my kids, I had my son was 16 and my daughter was 14 at the time. So well, yeah. So how's that 10 years if my son is, oh, my son is 26 and my daughter's 25. So 16 and 15. Yeah, it's 16 and 15. So they were 16 and 15 when I got home, and when I got home, it was like they got their mother back. They were just ecstatic. They were so happy. They treated me like that's it. She's fixed. And that held me. That held me, and also the want, for me to be me, to get myself back for me. Before I used to paint. When I was young, I used to paint and do all sorts of artistic things. And during my marriage and during the time that we were in the States, I completely disconnected from all of that. I think it was part of the time when I disconnected from myself. That's when you start drinking. You disconnect from yourself, and then you're lost. And then you start taking in things that will calm you. So it's the comfort eating, all of the junk food in the States. That's really, really, come on, dude. So it's all the junk food and the comfort food and the drinking. And I did once, I did math on how much I was drinking a day, because I used to drink beer. That was my thing. And beer is also fattening, a lot of calories. And one time when I was drinking, I did the calculation of how many calories I drink in a day, just in the alcohol. And I was drinking more calories in a day than I needed for my age, height, body build. Yeah, if you need 2,500 or 2,700 calories, then I was drinking over that amount a day just in drinking. Forget about all the hamburgers and all the junk food I was eating. Now I'm vegan. I don't eat any of that anymore, and it feels so like my body feels clean. I don't, it's you have to experience it to understand it. It's like everything is lighter. My body is lighter when you eat the heavy animal fats and milk, which is unnatural. Milk is made for baby cows. It's not made for adult humans, and that's why a lot of times it doesn't go through. And really, all most of my life, I think I've become vegan in the last year, and maybe around the last year. Before that, I kind of quit eating meat for a long time because it just kind of didn't do good for me. But completely vegan, it's been about a year, maybe a little less than a year. So I have no beef with anybody, and I have no judgment and nothing like that. For me, it happened kind of naturally also. It was kind of like, as this spiritual journey continues, it was like the next stop, and it just kind of felt natural. Also, as you go along the spiritual awakening, you connect more and more to everything around you. And the idea of like killing an animal and eating it just because it is more vulnerable than, I don't know. And the way that animals are herded and kept and no freedom. Um, it's because just like we belong to nature, we want to be outside. That's our natural state. I see the dogs in the morning. As soon as I get up, they're all excited because they know they're going outside. They're going outside. How fun! And so, um, what I was saying, oh, with the after the Big Depression, and I think that what happens with post trauma is that when you're in the trauma, you're hiding yourself from it. You're not looking at it. It's in there and it's closed off. And then there is a time when you have gone through extreme trauma, that like the trauma door opens. And when you get to a point where you can actually handle it, or when you are forced to face it, like I was pretty much forced to face it. That door was opened wide open in front of me. It was after we had already gotten a divorce. My husband and I, we went through, I mean, I knew I think that part of the reason that I stayed for so long is because I was getting up the courage. First of all, I was weak. I was in a weak state. I was insecure about the way that I looked. My husband always told me nobody's going to want me because I have 4 kids and I was fat, and I knew I was an alcoholic. I was like, I didn't I, and it's like being alone. I'd never been alone. I got married straight out of my parents' home, and my parents are together, and my mother is very like, if there is a stance, like the cookie cutter, the little woman role, that's the role my mom takes. And there's beauty in it. There's beauty in it. There's nature in it. She's naturally very, very feminine, very, very there's a nature to it. There's something beautiful about it. And when both of the partners treat it with respect, and that it's a respectful in a respectful way, because my father's also very masculine and very the father type, very like makes the, but it comes in a loving, natural way. And when I went into my marriage, that was the role models that I had. And my husband was also very dominant, very masculine, but he was different. He was also like a tyrant. My father's not so much a tyrant, maybe kind of primitive and you know, kind of primitive and like, but it's kind of in a funny Neanderthal way. But my husband was like very masculine, very tyranty, narcissistic. What's the other word? There's the narcissist, and then the narcissist always comes in. There's an umbrella which narcissist fits under, which is, what is it called? Oh, psychopath. He's like a psychopathic narcissist. And I will say, okay, and I'm gonna say this. My daughter diagnosed him with that when she was 14. She called me and she said, "You have to come and see this. You have to come and see this." And she sat me down to read an article. And I'm laughing about it. I'm laughing about it now because we've overcome so much. And you know what? My ex-husband, in his own way, has come a long ways. Come a long ways. I don't hold any grudges, and I don't hold anything against, and I also see my part in it. Just like I said, nobody could do anything to you that you don't allow them to do to you. And I sat there knowingly, I sat there, I drank myself, I ate myself, I was thinking, that being overweight, and I know that this is going to touch a lot of people, but I have been there. And I know being overweight is a place of, and not everybody, this isn't absolute. Yeah, it's not absolute. Because some people, that is their natural body build, is to be a little bit heavier. But for me, let's talk about me. And then I know that if anybody else that resonates with them, anybody else that knows that it's true for them, will know that it's true for them too. That for me, it was part of not dealing, part of my being unhealthy psychologically, because I was eating myself into comfort. I wasn't exercising enough. I didn't love myself. It was some kind of like self punishment. And I think also that something had to do with my marriage, like not wanting to be attractive. I was always very loyal. There was no chance of me, going out and, like, okay, I'm going to be spiteful in that way. That wasn't anything. I didn't have a want for that. I was also totally insecure to do anything like that. I didn't, and it wasn't even part of my world. Like that wasn't even a thought. And how did we get to all of this? Because I said that after we got a divorce, then I experienced with my sexuality, and I feel like I've done all the things that I've wanted to and more. And I can see that really, I think that in that area, I am pretty pretty healthy psychologically. Like I feel like I've worked myself out there, and that my sexuality is healed. I really feel like it just comes natural to me. Like there's nothing that I don't really have any kind of holdups there. Maybe I do. I don't know. That's how I feel. I don't feel like there's something in there that's I enjoy. I enjoy sex or making love, or I call it making love. Sex is kind of like disconnected. And I realized that it's not meaningful without a partner that I have genuine feelings for and that I'm connected to in a way that we are up like dedicated to one another, and where we have an understanding, and that I can trust the other side to be there. I like it's been over a year for me. I kind of miss intimacy. I miss intimacy, period. And and all of this whole thing started, all of these stories and everything started um, because I was talking about doing a business. Oh, so that led to talking about, okay, so we're going to come around full circle. We're going to close all these things off that I opened. So I was talking about concentration, and then I went and got the diagnosis for post trauma, and I thought that was so cool because now I thought that I had like overrode the system, and it took me about 2 weeks after I got the diagnosis to realize that I really do have post trauma. Like this is a real thing. And at first it was like shock. I was shocked. And I also felt like before in my life, any kind of like pattern or diagnosis, nothing stuck on me because I was an individual. Nothing stuck on me. You can't just take some kind of psychological thing and put it on me and it fits, because I'm so different than I've always been so different. And when I looked at it and realized, there was first the shock that, okay, you're not so different. This really does apply to you. And when I went over all of the symptoms, like they all applied. And with post trauma, what happens is you close everything off in a box, and then something happens in your life, or when you become strong enough to be able to handle the trauma box opens. So when the trauma box opened for me, I had already been like 5 years on the spiritual awakening. I already thought that I had come so far. I didn't think that I had any big Pandora boxes left. I thought that I had opened and dealt with everything, and I had already dealt with my ex-husband. We had already gotten a divorce. I was already on my own for quite a while. I was already raising my children. I had already had another relationship after my husband. When I first got a divorce for like 2.5 years, I didn't even want to hear about having anybody. After 2.5 years, I had a healing, beautiful relation with a beautiful man. And I think that I really did a lot of, by meeting him, I realized that not all men, that I realized that there are other men, and that men really think a lot like women. And it was really a really healing process for me, and I was blessed to have had that. So I looked at it, it was 29:29 on the video. Right when I looked at the time, I think it was probably the first time that I looked at the time, and it was 29:29. There's signs everywhere. Signs are everywhere. And so with the post trauma, it's like when you are ready psychologically, and also my husband at that time, I was talking about the alcoholism, and then I was talking about smoking weed. So after I quit with the alcoholism, it was probably quite a while, a few months at least after, about a half a year after, that I started smoking a little bit of weed. And at first I was just smoking really a little bit. And I really realized that when I did smoke the weed, that it has healing properties to it. It really allowed me, when I smoked weed, it allowed me to go into those places that I didn't allow myself to go into and heal them. Allowed me to bring up the thoughts of things that I had gone through during the marriage, and things that I had gone through in the business and in my childhood, and really open up all these little doors and go in and figure them out, and go all the way into the little loopholes, the little wormholes, and really find, because I think that a lot of times before that, I didn't go into all of those places. And I think that with the marijuana, it allows you lovingly to go in and look at these places lovingly in yourself. So I really do see value in and healing properties in marijuana. And I'm not saying anything about, that's just saying about the healing attributes, because I know that there is also abuse, which I got into abuse of marijuana when you're just starting to do it recreational, and you're already, you're just doing it for the fun or for the getting out. It's doing the same thing with the weed as it's doing with the alcohol. It's like running away. And that is one of the things that is why now I'm really looking at the marijuana and thinking, because there's been a few times that I've quit smoking marijuana completely, and it seems like in those times my life really starts moving in different direct. It like starts moving, just moving. And I really want right now some movement in my life. I want to and I really want to see what I am like I want to come into purity. Like, no outs. Once I come into my pure self, no outs. I'm standing upright in my own self. I know that I can deal with everything that comes my way, and I'm standing in on my own. Then if I want to bring in cannabis, and smoke here and there, recreational, or to do it as as a ceremonial with my partner, my life partner, or ceremonial with a group of people where we're doing some kind of work together through it, because it is a medicine. I really do see it as a medicine. I know how it helped me, and I know its power. I know its power in me. I can actually sit down and write a pamphlet about it. I could. Maybe I will one day. Maybe I will, and that'll be part of the process of letting it go, is really sitting down and giving it its respect. And that way, also, if I sit down and write something about it, I'm not saying that I'm going to. I'm just talking this out that I might. I'm talking it out for myself too. Then I could really put down into words my appreciation towards it, because I have a real respect for marijuana and an appreciation, because I know that's why I can't, like alcohol, I can put behind a door, and I know that it's not good for me. I know that it's not an option for me in my life because of the addiction. If I didn't have the addiction, I realize that it is something that is really fun, and it lets you get outside of your box. It lets you be completely open and experience, with friends in a party situation, and it really lets you out of your box and opens things up. And I can see how that could also be um, a healing process, because it takes you it shows you who you can be when you're let complete loose, and then it gives you like an anchor, and you can aim for there when you're not drinking. It's just kind of like the cannabis. So I really see the properties of this is good. I'm talking out the marijuana. This is good. This is good because I'm giving it its respect, but I'm also like I'm talking about the reasons why I'm setting it aside for a while. And this is good because it's coming from me. This is good. I think part of the closing off yesterday, I was just kind of like, I think I barely talked with anybody yesterday. I did the video in the morning, and that was like my talking. And then besides that, I barely spoke with anybody. I talked with my daughter a little bit. I talked with each one of my kids yesterday and my parents. That was it. Each one of my kids on the phone. I didn't see them. And I talked with my parents because I went over last night and painted some plates. So I'll tell about that in a second. Um, so with the post-trauma, like I guess I was at a place. My husband sued me for full custody of the kids because I was smoking marijuana, and that was like a big one. And then I quit smoking marijuana. That was one of the times that I quit smoking marijuana, because if I wasn't smoking marijuana, he had nothing on me. And it was unbelievable, the way that he twisted up everything. And he made me out to be like this druggy, uh, like I don't even want to get into it. Just anything bad that you can say about somebody, that the kids weren't taken care of, and that all sorts of things. It was horrible. And then all of a sudden I had like the authorities coming into my house. Just surprise. Come in, knock, knock, knock. We're here, opening the fridge, questioning me. I had the police, like somebody, not, like a children's police investigators, go to the school without me knowing, and pulling the kids out of class and interrogating them on film. They filmed it without me knowing. It was horrific. It was horrific. See, anything that you can think of that is like that you can think of, like the worst divorce that you could think of ever, I went through it all. It's like, probably, yeah, breaking into my house, the I'm still taking all of our savings, like anything that you can think of that you've heard of. And I think that that's part of the reason why I was so afraid to get a divorce, is because I knew that there was going to be shit flying. And to top it all off, like I have on my resume, alcoholic, right? So on top of everything, of him suing me and everything, in there is written that I'm an alcoholic. And it was, it's all on all of my paperwork everywhere, because I went through detox from alcohol. But then I went through detox. So, okay, we're going back to the post-trauma. I'm going to get to the point. So this is a story of me post-trauma alcoholism, and overweightness, obesity. And it wasn't obesity. A doctor said it's like, what is the word above obesity? Like super obesity. I was around 300 pounds. I know that I was 140 kilo. So 140 kilo when I weighed myself at the, when I don't, I think I was pretty close to, it was probably about the maximum I was. It was right around the time that I started losing weight. And that was like the last time I weighed myself, I think. I was 140 kilo. So you can do the math. You can just Google 140 kilo in pounds. It's a lot. Maybe one day I'll upload some pictures. There might be some pictures in my Facebook, old pictures from like 10 years ago. If anybody has friends on my Facebook, they can go in and take a look. I think that there's not very many because I didn't like taking pictures. That's something I said. I like for years and years and years I shied away from the camera. I probably have years that I don't have pictures. There's probably like there could probably be like a string of 3 or 4 years that I don't have any pictures at all. And nobody took pictures of me because, when you're married, if your spouse doesn't take pictures of you, I don't know. I'm not blaming or anything because I could have asked people to take pictures of me. I didn't. But if you don't have anybody around you that is like, oh, let me get a picture of you, then you just don't have pictures. That says a lot about my life. The thing about your life is that your life is only in the present moment. And I have a wonderful life. I love my life. I really do. I love my life and I'm loving it more and more because I'm realizing that I'm responsible for my life. I get up in the morning and I'm responsible for making my life. And that was the point that I was making when I first started this video, because that was the ultimate point that I was making. So I was talking about, oh, look at there. Oh, wait, I have to try to. I have to. There's a deer. Where'd it go? Oh, it took off. You can't see it now. Oh, no, there it is. Okay. I'll try to show it. You see it? Not the best focus. Okay. No, I think it went behind something anyway. But so the post-trauma, what happens with post-trauma is that it all of a sudden it's closed. All your traumas are closed off in this little box. So all the traumas of my marriage, yeah, I always thought I was above it all. That's like I was saying, you get called stupid on a daily basis and you think you're above it. Like, you can call me whatever you want. It doesn't hit me anyway. And then, of course, you're lashing back and you're thinking that your words don't have trauma to them, right? You're thinking that you're just answering. You don't see the bad that you're doing. You don't see the damage that you're doing. And I was good at it. But all of the trauma, everything that I went through in my marriage, all of a sudden this box that I had closed off, because I had to come in, to all of a sudden defend myself in court. And I hired this free lawyer, and she wasn't speaking me. She didn't get. Yeah, it was like I was fighting. It felt like fighting for my life, my children that I gave birth to. They're it's my life. It's the most precious. At that time, I had that. I was going out with my boyfriend. I just all of a sudden fell into this deep depression. Within 2 weeks, I couldn't see him. After I couldn't talk to him on the phone, he tried to call me and I just wouldn't answer. And after a few weeks, he asked me if he could come over, and he came over and he broke up with me. But I really see it as it was kind of a mutual thing, because I couldn't have him. It was just like all of a sudden the only thing that on my plate was my children and this depression that I was in, and I couldn't deal with him. I felt like he was pulling my energy, that I needed all of my energy in me just to deal with what I was going through. And I couldn't even talk to him. It was like all of a sudden he was closed off from me. And so there was nowhere to go with that anyway. It's not, and we broke up. It was very respectful. And there was no way that he could have been beside me anyway, because even when he tried to talk to me, I closed everybody out, even my closest friends. I closed everybody out. Nobody. I didn't let anybody in. I got up every morning and I went to my parents' house and tried to write, because I took this lawyer and then I fired her. And so then I represented myself in court, going through this deep depression, not functioning. And then I was even more afraid of them taking my kids away because I couldn't function. I knew I wasn't functioning. I couldn't clean house. I couldn't anything. And I would just get up in the morning like this empty shell. I get just going through the motions, getting my kids out to school, and then I would just run, go over to my parents' house, sit there, and I was trying to write out by myself my defense. And it took me, I don't even know how long. They gave me like 10 days to write in a response, and I couldn't. I couldn't. It took me, I think, 2 months, 2.5 months. But I sat down and I wrote out all of my traumas, everything that I went through, all of the things that in the divorce that I went through. And it was healing. It was healing for me. I haven't gone back and read it. I'm wondering, like, it's been years and I haven't gone back and read it. And I'm wondering if I should probably sit down and go back and read it just to go through it. It's just like my alcoholic book that I wrote and that now I want to put out and publish, because I really do think that it'll help people know what's going on in their mind, because I can articulate. It's just like I was saying with the weed, how I want to go in and write down exactly how it works and how it's healing, and how if somebody that is going through healing of, look, I have a bee in my cup. I don't know. Can you see it? I've been having bees landing on me all the time lately. It landed also on my leg before. Oh, look, it's coming to my arm. And so with the trauma, it's like the box opened and all of a sudden I had to deal with everything. And I actually sat down and wrote it all out. And then slowly I started coming out of that depression. And during that time, I quit smoking. And then I quit smoking weed. I quit smoking tobacco. I quit smoking everything. I completely cleaned up. And after a few months, I started getting like these, like charadot. Charadot is like these, where all of a sudden you get these fears. It's like, but it's like more than fear. It's anxiety attacks. And then I realized I took a drag from, I was going through this major anxiety attack, and somebody was smoking. I took a drag from their cigarette, and it just went and dissipated the entire that whole anxiety attack I was having. I just felt it like you know how you feel something just like melt out of you? It just like melted away. And that's when I realized the healing properties of tobacco, unless you abuse them. It's just like anything else. It has its healing properties. So nothing in this world is just pure evil. I guess there is pure evil. There is pure evil. Otherwise, there couldn't be evil and there couldn't be good. Just like there's pure good and there's pure evil. It's like the two spectrums. It's like a spectrum, not the two spectrums. It's like the spectrum, the two sides of the spectrum. It's like the paradox. But there's the I guess the evil part and the good part. And so I could when you find both sides of it, then you find the whole. And so I guess that there are really good healing properties also to tobacco, but because I am addicted now to tobacco, I don't smoke, but I'm addicted to tobacco. I quit smoking. I actually did a whole video series on quitting smoking the last time I quit smoking. I quit smoking once for 14 years, and then I started smoking again. Then I quit for a few months, and then I started smoking the time that I started smoking when I was having those anxiety attacks. And I just allowed myself. I said, okay, I know that I'm getting addicted back into it, but I need it because of these anxiety attacks. And I allowed myself because I knew that I could quit again. And then I did. I quit. And I don't need it now. And so that was about my cigarettes. And then with the post-trauma, okay, going back to the post-trauma. So with the post-trauma, all of a sudden the post-trauma just opens up on you. It's post-trauma, after trauma. So after you're done dealing with the trauma and the trauma's out of your life, you're left with this trauma closed off in this box, because you don't deal with it while you're going through the trauma. You ignore it. You close it off. Yeah, it doesn't harm me. It doesn't bother me. I'm not, when you're going through constant trauma, like for a very, very, very long time in a marriage of being very dominated and trauma and abuse and verbal abuse and emotional abuse and financial abuse and abuse. And you're going through it for so long, you don't realize how much trauma there is there, because you're so used to just closing it off. It's like this in the background. You don't allow yourself to deal with it, because if you were dealing with it, you would get up and leave, right? If you were admitting that you're going through trauma, you would get up and leave, because it would be so bad you couldn't go through it. But because you close the trauma off in a box, it's like you don't even feel it. It's like, no, I'm above this, I'm above this, I'm above this. And then when you realize that you weren't above it, it's all closed in this box, and then you become psychologically strong enough to deal with it, that box opens. And we're all sitting on Pandora boxes of trauma in us that are opening as we can deal with them. Childhood traumas. If we are seeking to go through and to, if we're just seeking to be monotone and go through our life and do the monotone every day, get up, go to work, come back, watch TV, every day, then we're not going to open up those Pandora boxes. They're not. I mean, they're not going to open. I mean, what is there to? Why would they open? What is there that we're pushing on that our life wants to continue? And because in order to open those boxes, we have to be out wanting to experience life. And in order to experience life, you have to go through your traumas, because in order to experience, let's say if you have a trauma in your sexuality when you're a child, then when you're an adult, anything that you do that is sexual is going to wake that trauma up and have you experience it again. So you stay away from your sexuality. But if you want to start experiencing your sexuality and enjoying your sexuality and fully embracing and exploring and enjoying your sexuality, then you are going to have to go through those traumas, because you cannot go into your sexuality without it triggering the trauma. So if you want to go through life and open up all of these different places in your life, you have to open up the traumas that are relevant to each of these places, or you just close these places off and never experience in them, and then you're not experiencing life to the fullest. So, and you're also, because you're not standing up in your strength, you are becoming a victim to yourself. You're becoming a victim of life. You're becoming a victim of circumstance. You're becoming a victim to others, that you're allowing them to victimize you. And you're allowing them also to be the victor. Look, victim, victor. You're allowing them, because that's also an addiction on their side. Being a victor and being a victim is the exact same thing. It's the two different sides of the same unit. If you have one victim and one victor in a marriage, you have the dependency and they're both dependencies. So even being a victor or having to control somebody to keep them with you is a form of extreme low self-esteem. So I think that to the level of my victimization was the level of his victimizing, and it's both to the same extreme detrimental. I'm coming up with this now, because I can see it energetically, because it has to be that way. It has to be that way for the yin and yang to be able to spiral together. Otherwise, they're not spiraling together, and then they're throwing each other off. Can't stay together. So and it has to be bad enough. I realized that I had to go one level under what I thought I deserved, really, in order for me to get up and as long as the marriage was aligned with what I felt like I deserved in life, then I stayed. Alcoholic, overweight, abusive, I can't do anything on my own, all of those things. Once something got a little bit too far, it was also the alcoholism, because I realized I got to rock bottom with it. I got to rock bottom with the alcoholism. It's a choice between choosing life or choosing alcohol. You get to this point where you can't you just can't ignore it anymore. You can't say that there isn't a problem because you have to. Oh, Rexy's chomping on a stick. Boy, I've gotten into a lot of things in this video. Cool. And so then I had to deal with all these traumas, and I sat down when I wrote them out, and then I started slowly gaining strength. So it's like coming above your traumas. Once you admit that they're there and you take responsibility for them too, you actually have to go in and say, this really happened. This really happened. And that really happened. And then once you really acknowledge and take responsibility and realize and admit to yourself that this really happened, that you really allowed this 20 years of your life. And then you're able to look at all of that, because when you're sitting on trauma, subconsciously you know it. And like in that whole 20 years of your life, you have like this blanket of gray. And kind of anything that's in your marriage is like, I don't want to look at, oh, it's kind of like, oh, gray. I want to just look at all the happy that I'm going towards now. But in that gray, there's so many things that happened that were good experiences. I'm talking about my children were born. I raised my children. We went on trips. I built a business. I know how to do things. We moved cross country twice. We did extraordinary things. And a lot of the extraordinary things and experiences and experience that I have in my life is under that blanket. And if I won't even look at the blanket, then I can't take out of that blanket also the good things that happened in my life. Like my children, exploring, building businesses, having employees, doing all, really taking my life and applying it into something like full-heartedly, and like my business. And in being able to go through those traumas, I was able to open up all those things and not be afraid to look at them, because embedded in them are all of those other memories. Like if I'm thinking about the business and how I built the business, and I did a lot on my own, and I'm not going to take credit away from my ex-husband. We did it together. But we did it together, but the experiences that I had are still my experiences, and I did it. I know how to do it. We complemented each other in that. If I built all of the structure of the business, he did a lot of the on-hands part of the business. Managing the employees and being on top of the schedules and managing all the trucks that we had, and coming in early in the morning to get all the crews out and make sure that everything that was on the trucks that had to be on the trucks, and then everything that had to do with the structure of the business, building the business, and the office employees and all of the contracts, and working with the administration. After that snake yesterday, I'm really, I just jumped because something moved in the bushes. I heard something move. I jumped. Man, that was a massive snake yesterday. Massive. Says that ended really well. It ended really well. Yeah, I was just caught myself about to say it could have ended different, but it couldn't have. It couldn't have ended different than it did. Something I'm realizing is that nothing could be different than it is. It's just like my marriage. I could have never, like when I first got out of my marriage, after I left, and after it was like final that I left, and I got through all of the first mess of leaving, which was very difficult because it also involved a cross-continent move. I moved back to Israel away from my husband. We kept the business going for another couple of years. We had a manager there, but it was, it was quite a conquest, to leave my husband. I mean, it was moving cross country. It was moving, it was also I also went into rehab for my alcoholism. I was also overweight, and it gets to a point. And then after I left him, one of the biggest things, I was in therapy for the alcoholism, just very conventional, straightforward therapy for 3 years, once a week, and sometimes we had group meetings. Like we had this, probably for a few months, we had these group meetings, which was really interesting, really interesting to hear other people's stories. But it was a group meeting with not only alcoholics, but also people that were addicted to himurim, to gambling. And that was like really strange. It was like, not strange because I can see it. It's the same addiction. But it's like being addicted to something that you don't even put it in your body. It's like a brain addiction. And there was somebody there that went to prison. He was at house arrest when I met him because he had embezzled 10 million shekels. 10 million shekels. He was working as something in finances for a government, like an area, and he was responsible for the money. And somehow he embezzled 10 million shekels over the course of a few years. Gambling. And so he was there in his story, and it was really interesting. You see, life takes you on these adventures, and you get all of this experience and knowledge and things that you would have never thought, and interesting things. But one of the biggest things that I had after I got a divorce was, why didn't I do it before? I think that was the biggest thing. I had why didn't you leave? Why didn't you leave before? Why did you stay so long? I think I went into like this mourning over the years that I had lost. Being fat, being an alcoholic, being married to him. It was like mourning. And then what really let me off of that, because that went on for a while, it was that why did you stay? How did you stay? Why did you waste so many years? It was like this deep, deep, deep sorrow once I left. But then when I realized, first of all, that during that time, it's not like I was sitting on my hands. During that time, we did all sorts of things. We built a business. We had kids. My children are wonderful. So I can't say that. You can't say that. But I still felt it. But what really, really mostly helped me with that is realizing that if I had been able to get up and leave before, had I had the strength, I would have left before. I didn't have the strength. It had to have gotten to the point that it did with my alcoholism, with how bad the marriage became at the end. I wasn't even sleeping with him in the same room in the end. Like I couldn't even sleep with him. And for I think the last 6 months or so, it got so bad that something's got to give. Something's got to push. And it had to have gotten to that point for me to leave. Had it, see, this is the gift in it. Had it stayed just bad and not gotten so bad, but had been, had it been really, really bad, but not so bad that I broke, I would have stayed for the rest of my life. So I can see it as a gift. Good thing it got that bad. Otherwise, I would have still been there, totally asleep. I can see it in people around me. I can see it in my parents. where I can see it. I can see it in so many people. So I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones. I am one of the lucky ones. And we all have the potential. So that's about my post-trauma. Okay, so now we're getting back to the work. So when I got the diagnosis, and I'm gonna finish this up quick because I'm on my way back and I want to get back to work. So, and this is over an hour now. So when I got over my when I got the diagnosis for the trauma, all of a sudden, and that I realized that I really do have trauma. It was like 2 weeks later after I got the diagnosis, all of a sudden it hit me, wait a minute, I really do have post-trauma. But then then it was like a gift, because when I got over the shock that I'm not so special and that my brain works like humankind, I had a map to my post-trauma. I could go in and I could read what all the symptoms are, and I was like, oh, that is post-trauma. So then I had a map to work on. And I could go in and go over each of them and see why. Like, for instance, with the focus, I understand, they say that you lose focus, and they give all sorts of scientific reasons or whatever. But I understand why. It's because you're in a constant state of something's going to happen. So you're into this constant state of alertness. When you focus on something, you allow yourself and your whole psyche to get into it. But when you're year after year after year, you're always on edge, because at any time you don't allow yourself to sink into full concentration, because you can be jolted out of it. So you're always on guard, you're always on edge, you're always alert. When you are in an abusive relationship, you are always alert. And then your brain doesn't want to go into focus, because it's like you are, you lose yourself in it. And so when I realized that, first of all, I can be easier on myself and understand where I'm coming from. But it's also something that I can work on. Because I do have places of focus. I do have places, like when I get into something, that I can completely relax into them. So the more and more I can do that purposefully, the more and more I heal myself in that. And knowing that helps me. And that's one of the big things that I realized in the post-trauma. But there's so many other things also that were easy, that I just got rid of just like that. When I saw them written, I'm like, oh, okay, I see the reason behind it. Like when you go through trauma and you go through post-trauma, and then when you have like this map, you can look at each and every one of the symptoms, and you can see why it was caused, how the trauma causes these. Like, I can see it in my own brain. So yesterday, with this whole twin flame thing, I just kind of feel tired, and I feel like I'm tired of not having money. And I just want to do something about it. And yesterday, I just want to get excited about it. Yesterday, I just decided I'm just doing. And I sat on the computer I got back from my walk before 8. I sat down on the computer. I was on the computer until after 4, working, doing all sorts of things that I had on my list to do. And none of them are, like directly, well, I did painting in the evening, but none of them are directly connected to like making money. But it's all sorts of things that need to be done in order to set up a base. Okay, so good morning. I'm getting back already to my house. So I'm going to go and work. So if you've watched up till now, thank you for watching.